Thank you very much. Man, I better not screw up after that introduction, or we won't have you back next year. So anyway, thanks very much for attending this session. I'm actually very excited. The organizers chose really interesting niches for this panel that I'll be moderating. And I'd actually be surprised if any of you have actually looked into any of these yet, and they're actually performing very well right now. So I'm very excited. I'm just going to bring our panelists up right now. All right. Well, thanks again for everybody for coming. We appreciate it. We're just going to start off real quick with very quick introductions from all the panelists. We'll start with Josh here on my left.
So hello, everyone. Let's hear it for Ben Lapidus and the people from this conference.
Yeah.
They're doing a great job. My name is Josh McCowan. The quick thing on me is I'm the guy with the 10 kids at all these conferences, all from my lovely wife and I, 25 years married, 2 years old at 22. That's all you need to know. No, the next thing you need to know is we run a hospitality business that actually develops lifestyle hospitality, and passionate about it. Can't wait to share with you if you ever want to grab me afterwards. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good afternoon, everybody. Frank Saul. Spent most of my career being an owner, developer, operator of Class A residential office and grocery-anchored shopping centers, as well as hotels. But I'm here today to talk about converting older hotels into residential, ending up with traditional resi product.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Todd Dexheimer. I have had a lot of different journey into real estate. Started doing the fix and flips and single-family rentals. I still do a lot of multifamily, large multifamily. And recently, over the last few years, we started buying assisted living and memory care. And so that's what I'll be talking about today.
Great, thanks guys, I appreciate it. Before we start, I just want to point out, if you didn't hear before, we're all going to be in the room where we had lunch, in the other ballroom behind us, after this for Q&A. So we're not going to have Q&A for the audience for this panel, but you're welcome to come. There's going to be at least 20 minutes. Each of us is going to be a different table if you want to come reach us and talk to us, so just FYI. So I'm going to start with Josh. So Josh, you have a really unusual focus, which I believe you call Drive to Leisure. And I was hoping you could explain to the audience exactly what Drive to Leisure is and just your high-level business plan.
Yeah, so the business plan for us was discovered over the last 13, 14 years. I originally worked for a family office and built a brand of waterfront resorts that benefited Manhattan people and New York travelers, and the whole theory was that it was drivable leisure. And at the time, in the early 2011, whatever, we didn't think of it as that novel. Pandemic made it highlight. As a matter of fact, as we can talk, the statistics on hospitality were abysmal during the pandemic, except for our niche of drive to leisure. It actually exploded. And then we're in a niche of the niche where we add layers of revenue using weddings first. We're a big, extremely large, successful wedding operator, and then other festivals and events to layer on top of the drive to leisure and benefit from all the wealth of the markets right around. So that's what we tend to call our specialty.
Great, okay, thank you. Frank, so you also have a very interesting niche, obviously, and what I was very fascinated by is that with prices where they are today across most assets, which are very high, it seems like you're able to either buy the assets at up to 50% discount to their previous sale price or up to 50% below replacement value based on what you're buying today, which is obviously very unusual. So I was hoping you could explain your business of converting hotel to residential in a little more detail, and also what you've been seeing as far as pricing, just for the audience.
Sure. So what's interesting about this, the execution's kind of niche. It's definitely different. The end product is very traditional resi. And how are we doing that? We're basically finding older hotels, sort of Gen 1, think of Holiday Inn, Ramada Inn, that's 30 plus years old, in a good location. But the challenge for that particular box is that there has been new brands built up over the years, better flags, new flags. This might have started as a Holiday, and it's been sliding down the brand flagpole. And the economics of reopening it just don't work. And so we're buying these at a significant discount. It's a pretty heavy value add, right? We want to end up with a mix of units. We want it to feel very residential. We're combining rooms, putting in kitchens, the whole thing. Generally they come with a lot of amenities, which is nice. So we take those, we reconfigure them a little bit, and typically we end up with a better package than our competition. We've got a new unit. We've got better amenities than the older garden apartments around us, but we're in at a price point where we can charge a market rent.
Great. All right, thank you. So, Todd, you're focused on senior housing, and I'm under the assumption there's some people in the audience who aren't familiar with senior housing because it's kind of a complicated asset class. I've invested across a couple deals, but it's definitely a lot of verticals to consider. I was hoping you can give the audience a high-level overview of the various verticals you could invest in and why you're focused specifically on the couple verticals that you're targeting in that specific niche.
Yeah, so in senior housing, there's obviously 55 plus, there's independent living, there's assisted living, there's memory care, there's nursing homes, and there's also combination projects. I guess we really have geared ourselves towards the assisted living, kind of the margins, the level of care is not so high that we need a ton of skilled nurses in there. But at the same time, it provides really good margins, and there's just a lot of opportunity in the market. The main reason was we saw a big gap in the level of sophistication with the operators and what should be done. And so we thought it just provided a lot of opportunity to come in there, bring a lot of technology, bring a lot of processes and systems. It's a very fractured industry, very ma-and-pa industry. So if we can operate it like a true business, we should be able to eliminate a lot of the problems that happen in the assisted living and the memory care fields right now.
Okay, great, thank you. So, Josh, you're involved in hotels, and it's not surprising that obviously some hotels have had major challenges during the pandemic. I know some have had to close down permanently over time, but in getting to know what you were doing, it was pretty clear to me that your properties were doing extremely well during the pandemic. I was hoping you could explain to the audience why your properties performed really well during the pandemic, during COVID, and also why they have performed probably better than most hotels in general during that time.
We benefit from a couple different layers going on, and there's this dirty word out there is people want passive income and they want to buy an asset that's triple net would be the epitome of the best kind of asset class if you want passive management. Then there's the multifamily has some management or you could outsource it. Then you get to hospitality and there's a lot more hands-on unless you outsource the management. Well, we have a business where we've embraced those extra layers of business. And much like the DLP gentleman, Don Wenner, we embrace the fact that we're an employer. And because we've embraced that, we've been able to do something that I think is kind of special. We're allowed to buy assets that are based on real estate, using valuations based on commercial real estate like a building, but we're layering on numerous revenue streams. And when you do that, it allows us to force appreciation at multiples that are much quicker and with more levers. I always say, what lever can we pull? And over the years, we've been doing this now. It's our fifth time in 8-9 years of complete rehabs. And they're heavy lifts, except for they look more like, how you could paraphrase our business? It's more like we're doing Airbnb on steroids, if you want to think of it. We're doing really, truly experiential lifestyle spaces, places, things that you want to go to right now, not just boxes. I thought you did a great job. Frank said the boxes he's buying, and that's the terminology in the hospitality industry, those are the outdated boxes that now have a chance for new life. Well, we're not necessarily buying boxes. We're buying 200-acre waterfront estates that have farms and equestrian centers or marinas, and we're turning them into hospitality, or they're already hospitality assets. We're just layering on things like weddings. Going from zero revenue in that line of business, in 2 years, it's probably a $6 million new revenue line right on that asset. So an asset that might have only used to be doing 1.5 million of top line revenue when we bought it, 2 years later is doing close to 6 million, or even 8 million is what we're on pace at one of them. So what we're doing is we're using the benefit of buying real estate and layering on a relatively predictable set of income streams. You'd be surprised how consistent the wedding business actually is, even with the pandemic. It's a formula that we've been living in for years now and we've mastered, I'm proud to say that the one that we're more advanced on, the one up in New Jersey, is the largest single property for weddings in America, and it's just its second year of operation, doing over 357 weddings at one property in a year, doing over $14 million of wedding business in 1 year from basically nothing in wedding revenue. So then you take that layer, which is this sold business, we hire great salespeople, we do great marketing, and we layer on a very consistent business. But what it does is then takes this little hotel, which is a problem, we only have a small hotel there, but it actually sells it out for multiple years into the future. So now we've basically, it's like we've put a Class A tenant in the hotel, it's booked. And we've pushed rate. Compared to market, we're in not a very rich market. So our market rate right in that area where I have Renault is probably $150 a night. We're selling for over $300 a night, and we can probably push $500 next year a night. And we're sold out not every night, but 3 nights a year for 3 years, really 2.5 years. And what we do is we sell the wedding contract with so much lead time that you actually know next year's budget. And what's bizarre, and when I talk to all my multifamily friends, which I'm in a sea of multifamily friends, I tell them this one shocking fact, that we actually have 25% of next year's revenue in our reserves already. So the craziest part about weddings is you do drop 25% of the deposit today, or else we can't secure the room. So last thing there is this kind of layered business model. And the COVID, one little story about the COVID. The COVID came, we all shut down in March 2020. We did hunker down thinking it was the end of our business model for a while. And one weird thing happened. We weren't allowed to run our restaurants. You know, usually our properties will have multiple restaurant concepts, outdoor beer gardens, waterfront, dockside stuff, and then of course indoor full scale, and then of course catering. Well, we couldn't do anything indoors, and most of our building was indoors. So we designed an outdoor village. We ended up selling over a few $1 million worth of food and beverage during the pandemic because we were one of the only legal things that had music 4 days a week. We built an ice rink in an ice rink village like Gaylord Village out here. And we ended up making it in the Wall Street Journal during the pandemic because we actually pivoted so solidly that what I'm about to say in summary is that because we think of it as a business, we had the flexibility to actually pivot into proper cash flowing businesses that actually the pandemic supported. We kept selling weddings, brought in several $1 million worth of deposits while the pandemic was happening, and we ended the pandemic paying our preferences and not missing a beat. Even though we lost a year of developing the wedding operations, we didn't lose a year of selling. So I hope I answered your question, but the layer of thinking of it as a business, but having it underwritten with real estate, to us, we see as a massive strength and a leverage in our business model.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to give you a little more credit than you gave yourself, though, in the answer. I think you mentioned that you were occupied for 3 nights out of the year. I think you meant 3 nights out of each week.
3 nights out of each week.
Yes,
absolutely.
there you go.
3 nights out of each week, we can charge pretty much whatever we need to charge. The other nights, we don't even put in the pro forma. And that's just a trick we came up with years ago. So when you guys get a pro forma and you're saying, well, how does he underwrite? You know, they're not going to sell out every day. We're not. And that's contradictory. That's anathema to the normal Marriott model, which needs to be about 75 to 80% annual sale occupancy. We don't. We work hard on the weekends. And then we move, obviously we move to, after the pandemic, we'll move to corporate weekday, but I knew not to promise that. So I hope that answers that question.
Yes, thank you very much. Todd, so as I mentioned before, I've invested in a few senior housing deals over the years, but they've all been pretty large properties, and you're focused, I think, more on like 10 to 50 bed properties, which seems to make perfect sense for your market. I was hoping you could explain to the audience why you're targeting the 10 to 50 bed range, and also which markets you're targeting and why that all works together based on where you operate.
Yeah, so we like the 10 to 50 bed for several reasons. So the markets we're targeting is, right now it's Minnesota, Wisconsin, but in particular it's more just smaller tertiary markets. And when you look at who's your renter demographic in there, who your resident is going to be, it's going to be somebody from a smaller town who wants to stay in that small town. They want nothing to do with the big city. They don't want to move to the big city and live with the Cityans. They want to stay where they're at, and that's where they're going to live. And so they also don't want to live in this big, ginormous building. They want to live in a small home that feels like home. And so our buildings are set up to feel a lot like home. It's got a living room, it's got a dining room, it's got its own kitchen, and it's got a couple different sitting areas. And so it just kind of feels like home to them. They've got their own, bedroom, and it's the whole thing. They don't have to take the elevator up and down and navigate the hallways and figure out where they're going. It's just a nice feeling. And these are purpose-built buildings that are laid out just one level, slab on grade, and that's kind of the model. And yeah, I mean that's why we like them. They attract the type of residents we need for the area that we're in. And we've got some competition. We've got one building that's in a rural town, and there's another brand new build, 3 stories high, looks like a box. I mean, it looks like it would work well in a big city, but it's sitting here in this small town, and they're getting less rent per resident than we are, and we're 100% occupied, and they're sitting at like 70% occupancy. And it just shows you that these people don't want that. They don't want to feel like they're being put into a box.
Got it. Okay, thank you. So quick show of hands from the audience. How many people here have either seriously considered or invested in a value-add multifamily opportunity in the last 2 years? Wow, okay, yeah, it is a very good part of the room. That's what I thought. So this question is going to interest you, I think. So Frank, I know that you actually are converting hotels to residential to multifamily, and what I found really fascinating is that you're currently able to do that at up to 30% below a comparable, your all-in cost is up to 30% below the typical value-add multifamily deal that we've all been seeing a tremendous volume of in the last few years. I was hoping you could explain your business model to the audience and how you're able to achieve literally an identical end product, but up to 30% below the value-add all-in cost. And I say this because that implies that you could potentially deliver higher returns to investors with a similar end product, which is really interesting.
It's a good question. You want me to give away all my secret sauce? So look, big picture, we're buying hotels that aren't going to reopen. If a hotel can make it back, it's going to cost too much, right? So we don't spend time on those. We spend time on the guys that aren't going to make it, and we can pretty quickly figure out if it's going to be one of those. So, the folks that we're buying from, some are in immediate distress and we're contracting right away. Others we've been talking to for 6 months. They haven't realized what's happened to their asset. They keep calling us every month. They come down in price. We got one that, 6 months, it's probably 7 months now later, under contract. So we're generally buying these for about $25K a hotel room. We're combining them. We're creating a mix of apartments. So our basis ends up being, 50, 60, 70, somewhere in that range per apartment. And then we're spending $60 per apartment to build them, to convert them. If you look at, your typical value add today, it depends what market you're in, but you're buying them for $120, $150 a unit, and then you're spending $20, $30 to renovate them and push rents up. Right?
Yeah, and I should have clarified, your focus on Class B multifamily, correct? As
yes,
product.
yeah. So our target is middle income housing, right? We've got, pick your study, 4 to 5 million shortage of middle income housing units. It's a 20 or 30 year problem. So the markets we're going into, there's almost, I don't want to say there's none, but there's almost no new supply at this price point, right? It's hard to build a garden apartment for 200 grand now. So we're going into a market, we're basically providing a new unit, heavily amenitized, as I said earlier, and most of our competition is 20, 30, 40-year-old garden apartments. Some are well taken care of, but a lot of the market is tired, and so we think it's a very attractive opportunity. It's largely been brought on because of COVID, right? People have converted hotels before, but the opportunity today has been brought on by COVID.
Okay.
And it's unfortunate for the hotel owners, but it's a really good way to start feeding into this supply problem in middle income housing. So we're excited about it. It's nice returns and it's a good thing to do.
Great, thank you. And so for those of you who are still interested in value-add multifamily but finding it expensive, you may want to talk to Frank after in the other room we're going to be in.
Pleased to talk to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Todd, quick question. We all know that COVID has hit senior housing, some worse than others, but some have been really decimated, and it's unfortunate. But that's also presented some opportunities for your own acquisitions. And I know that you've been able to find stuff at also up to a huge discount of 50 cents on the dollar, which is amazing. I was hoping you could kind of share what you've been seeing in the market as far as pricing, and maybe, I don't know if it's confidential or not, I did not ask permission in advance from Todd, so I'm wondering if you can maybe share a recent deal, an actual live deal you did, and just talk about the economics and how type of discount you got.
Yeah, first of all, yeah, COVID really did a number on the industry. The industry's done really well through all the last recessions, but COVID, added PPE expenses. You had obviously deaths due to COVID. You had just, the biggest thing was the fear, right? I don't want to send mom or dad into this place, and so we're going to hold them back. So occupancy levels nationwide went from 92% down to 76%. They're climbing now, but they went down really low. And so what we saw is that the margin was wiped away. A lot of these owners, like I said, are mom and pop owners. They own one, maybe two buildings. They're not good business owners necessarily. They got in the business maybe because they were in that industry or whatever it might be, or they're real estate people and they heard somebody up on stage talking about how awesome it was, so they thought they would do it and they didn't know what they were doing. So don't go do it, or learn first. But anyways, so we're finding these deals that literally have sold for much larger prices than we're buying. I can give you two real quick, if two is okay. I'll make it fast.
Yeah, sure.
So the one was purchased in 2015 for $2.6 million, roughly $2.6 million, I believe. We bought it for $850,000. What was their main problem? Payroll. They were paying $1.6 million in payroll per year with 18 residents. We now have 23 residents, actually just 24. And I believe our payroll number last I looked was $625,000. Big difference. We're now profitable where they were getting crushed. We have another deal closed on not too long ago. We bought it for $13.35 million. They were looking to sell that for about $30 million pre-COVID. It appraised real estate value alone. We got an appraisal for $17.82 on the real estate, no business included. The business is a big part of the business, just like Josh, mentioned that's a big part of adding to that value. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I should have asked you if you were okay sharing details.
That's all right.
In advance, sorry about that. Just so everybody knows, I don't share my questions in advance, so it's much more authentic. So that's why that happened. But thanks for that answer, Josh. So. There's a lot of real estate investors in the room, and I know, and I mean included, and when we invest in real estate, we're investing in real estate as the business. I know that you see your business more as an operating business that's collateralized against the real estate, and that's the way you think about it. I know you touched upon that a little bit before, and as a result, you have a ton of ancillary revenue potential. I was hoping you could share a little more detail with the audience about some of the income streams you get, how you look at it. I know when we talked, like you get a lot of revenue from bars, restaurants, et cetera. So maybe I was hoping you could break some of that down with the audience in a little more detail.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, you can see it as both good or bad, but for us, we see it as good. The numbers, this property, let's use Renault, for example, it's more dominated by the non-hotel room revenue than the hotel room revenue. Frank will tell you that makes it a little bit odd. Usually hotels are room revenue, much more than 50, 70, even 75%, and then food and beverage. Well, a long time ago, when we got into the business, we were doing it, we were saving a failed hotel business. Actually, this gives you a little backstory. In 2010, it was actually 2005, my old partner bought a hotel on the beach. And he said, this will be great, I'll tear it down and build condos. It's the boom days of the early 2000s. He kept it a dumpy hotel until the recession started and he got caught. We all got caught. And he said, I can never tear it down because it's like really close to the water, which I won't be able to rebuild. And it's concrete, it's stable. So he held it, and it struggled for years through the original recession of early 2000s. So he came to me and we built a business plan around a resort-style renovation instead of just a cleanup. When we did that, we thought of it in terms of hotel rooms, and that was a struggle because when you're built on hotel rooms and you're in a seasonal resort experience, you can do whatever you want for the peak season and you'll have no business the rest of the year. So we slowly metamorphosized into understanding that we can control our own destiny if we invest in the non-rooms revenue. It'll give us the rooms revenue. And that pivot was pretty important to us. And so we ended up kind of developing a lot of skills around not only sales, we're at our roots, a sales culture. We really believe in sales as a positive, but we also believed that food and beverage was the core. So instead of just being food and beverage, we crystallized what makes money in food and beverage. And you guys actually know this de facto. You know it's catered food, not regular food, not high-end food. It's catered contractual food and beverage does actually make good money. The things that don't make much money are fine dining a la carte. So we've stayed away from fine dining a la carte. Then within a la carte, which just means you and I walking up to a restaurant right now, we focused heavily on the bar. And we really focused on building a great entertainment culture that you wouldn't drink and have a lot of spirits. So by doing that, we organized our entire business around making sure that people have those types of revenues are maximized. And then of course, the a la carte restaurants are not usually, they're there, but they're not our primary focus. So to go back to your point, we dug deep into the wedding business. So for example, we're looking at several acquisitions in Texas. And the first thing we're actually studying is, this is our secret sauce, as Frank said. Our secret sauce is that we have access to the analytics of how many leads come into each region for wedding inquiries, historically, over the last 10 years, and then as it's trended. We can look at a market, just like if you're in multifamily and you know job growth is going on, we can actually see how profitable we'll be and how quick we can turn something around by wedding leads. Even though we do more than weddings, we use it as our canary in the coal mine. If this property is Instagram perfect, and that's our specialty, is designing beautiful things, and if we hire and invest in sales processes, we can almost, without a doubt, predict our critical path to profitability and our immediate sales turnaround. So if you do that, you can really de-risk a redevelopment of a resort. And that's basically our strategy, is we lead with weddings, but weddings create this halo effect. Of course, we all know how expensive weddings are, but they create this awesome halo effect where you and your lovely fiance found out about our property because of our excellent marketing and excellent service, but then you invite your 100 family members who are all quite affluent, many of them doctors, and they fall in love with our resorts on a greater scale. So our database grows by 3,000 people pretty much a month.
Wow.
So, and when we do festivals, it can be faster. So we sit on a 250,000 person database at one resort that we built from these types of expansion plans of weddings and festivals that, as Frank knows, in our business, the Drive to Leisure, we can then market to you to come back for the Valentine's getaway with your lovely wife, or the country music jamboree, or the festival with the kids. So we actually really designed a pretty organic business that really, it does seem to compound on itself in a great way. We call weddings cash flow positive marketing, and we're really good at weddings. But at the end of the day, we actually believe, and I'll just end on this and I'll stop. We believe that hospitality is, even though I've talked to you about all the numbers and how we make this so extremely attractive for us and investors, it all comes down to three core virtues that we teach, and this is why we're successful in what we do and why we have a path to growth right now, is we teach our teammates, please don't join the team unless you want these three virtues. These virtues have been distilled over years and years of working in the field in hospitality. we say hospitality is built on a culture of joy. Like, you have to enjoy your work. So if you don't enjoy service, please do not join us. 2, everyone on our team needs to embrace humility as a strength, or else it just won't work. It's such a team sport. It's like football. All 11 players have to work in unison. And 3, would you join us and make your work a ministry for the good of the other person? And so we translate the work of selling into sales are sacred, because by selling, we employ 300 employees. We translate the sale of a cheeseburger into delivering a kindness and a gesture of love to a guest. And we just try to encourage our staff to transmute simple tasks into purposeful, intentional actions. And so what we're doing is we're basically creating a coaching program, which is mandatory every week, where our staff learn how to really use their tasks and their work for the greater good. And it's very empowering, and it's hard to explain in a quick little 1 minute, but that is really the core of why we do it, and that's really working.
Okay, thanks for sharing those details. Frank, so you're converting hotels to Class B multifamily, and what's interesting about some of the properties you buy is that you may be buying properties in markets where there isn't a lot of land, and yet you have this unique advantage where you're getting a lot of parking and a lot of land that you don't necessarily need all of, right? And what I found really interesting about your business model is that you're able to create a lot of amenities and other items, significantly more than most of your competitive multifamily buildings you're going to find around the corner that are competing against you in Class B. And I almost feel like you build like a B++ asset because you offer the amenities of a Class A, but you're still in line with Class B rent pricing.
Yeah.
So I was hoping you could explain a little bit more about that to the audience as far as how you see amenities, how you're able to leverage the size of land that you're getting to be able to provide more amenities and outcompete some of your other properties in the area.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how a lot of different things sort of aligned in this conversion that work out. It's a lot of elbow grease for small deals. That's probably the downside, but a lot of different things sort of line up. One of them is the land. So we're reducing the count, so we have excess parking. Generally, these things are slightly more commercial locations. They're not where you would typically think of an apartment building. So we use that excess land to do better screening, add landscaping. We add sort of the barbecue pits, the swing sets, the dog runs, and kind of create a very nice, typical residential environment. And that's part of what makes this conversion work. You got to have synergies in different areas. The bones of the building actually work very well. Most of the product that we're chasing of this generation, the rooms are around 320 square feet, so we end up with a 640, 50 one bedroom. We're building a mix, but that's a pretty traditional unit. And I've spoken about the first floor and how that converts to amenity space. So a lot of different parts of this sort of, when it started, I was thinking about the big boxes downtown, sort of 300 unit things, and then pretty quickly, all the big banks in New York were raising distressed real estate, and I said, Jesus, this stuff's going to get bid up. It's going to be low yield. I don't want to go to battle against those guys. And I started digging deeper, and this is where the opportunity is. It's in these older guys that aren't going to make it back, unfortunately. So we find them in a lot of great locations, diverse employment, high population. Sometimes there's excess land, but lots of times there's not, and so that synergy really makes a big difference.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you. So we have time for one last question, and then I want to encourage everybody. These guys are very knowledgeable about their niches. If you want to ask them any questions, we're going to be in the room behind us where lunch was before. Right after this panel, I believe there's a break, and you can ask whatever questions you have for them. I'll also be at a table separately if you want to come see me. So Todd, as we've discussed before, senior housing obviously been hit by COVID. I'm curious to know if any of your facilities have had any COVID-related challenges, but I'm also curious to know how you think about that as an operator going forward. I know for a fact, because I'm invested in the space, that things are picking up and you guys are bringing occupancy back, and I think the worst is probably behind the whole industry, which is great for everybody, obviously, including the residents. But just curious to get your take on what you've seen during COVID and where you think things are heading and how you're managing things yourself.
Yeah, certainly we have had our challenges. I would say the challenges haven't necessarily been on COVID outbreaks. We did have a COVID outbreak at one time. Actually, the building that we bought for $850,000, they had two buildings, and they had, I think it was 8 or 10 residents pass away due to COVID prior to us buying it. But we've only had one COVID outbreak. It was pretty minor. Lost one person because of it. But I would say the challenges due to COVID have been more on the leasing aspect, just trying to get people more comfortable with, like, this is not a bad place to send your loved ones. I think there was a lot of media and all that coverage of oh, this is a scary place to send your loved ones, and so that certainly did a big number on the industry. How do I see it moving forward? Look, it's going to be a challenge. It takes a little while to mend wounds, and so it's certainly going to be a challenge. We're looking at it on an outlook of at least a couple more years of slower than normal rent growth as far as occupancy, higher vacancy rates, and quite frankly, it works. That makes sense when you look at the demographics. Our average age of an incoming resident is 82 years old, and the baby boomers who are going to be flooding into the markets, the oldest baby boomers are 74 years old, 75 years old. So we've got some time before they really start hitting the market, but once they do, that population is set to double by 2033, I believe, from what it is right now to 2033, and then it's going to double again. And so that's what we're excited about. Short term, we know we're going to have some challenges, and we're ready for them. But long term, I think the market, it's going to be pretty amazing.
Yeah, the growth projections in that market, and I've researched it myself as an investor, are just off the charts, especially once we hit the next couple of years and moving forward. So yeah. I fully agree. Well, I just want to thank everyone again for attending this session today. We're out of time, but please feel free to visit us and join us at one of the tables back behind this wall over here. I think you have to go around to reach us, all right? And thanks for the panelists for all your time.
Thanks,
Really
everybody.
appreciate it.
Thank you.